Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, our special guest is Robyn Hyden, Executive Director of Alabama Arise. Also, the V-Team takes a look at a new surge in COVID-19 infections. And Attorney General Steve Marshall will not disclose his whereabouts leading up to the January 6th insurrection.
I see nothing. I know nothing.
Lion Doomcough. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and today I'm joined by research guru extraordinaire, Susan Britt.
Hello.
And Josh Moon, columnist with APR and investigative reporter. Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, guys.
Josh, we're going to get to it later, but one of your reports ended up in court this past week. That's always fun, right?
Nice, right? Oh, always nice to be in evidence and not on the stand.
That's exactly right.
Always,
That's
yeah.
exactly right. Well, good job there. We've been talking about COVID-19, it seems like forever, and we're not going to be able to stop talking about it now because nearly 65% of the state of Alabama is not vaccinated, and we're seeing a resurgence in cases, Susan, because of the Delta variant, and we have increased almost 200% in the last 2 weeks.
As of Tuesday, the number hit 554, which is a 194% increase from a month ago. We've got reported to an additional 1,391 confirmed cases on Tuesday, which brought the daily average of reported cases for the week to 914, which is a 478% increase from 30 days ago. We've got children in the hospital now, which has risen from 9 to 22 this past week. I mean, this Delta the Delta variant is really, really taking the state by a stranglehold.
I mean, Josh, the people that have been vaccinated, there are people that are reported to have contracted COVID-19, but they're not in the hospital. The people that are in the hospital, the people that are getting very sick are those who have not been vaccinated. But we've talked till we're blue in the face. The state has done everything which would seemingly be important. But still, the vaccination rate is almost dead last, if not dead last in the United States.
Yeah, last check, it was dead last still. I don't know what else needs to be said. I wrote a column about this, about, almost being willing to give KIV a pass. I think it does matter if some of these Republicans will come out, as you're kind of seeing now more and more, as they slowly start to realize what we're facing again. Because let me tell you, I think people focus a lot on the shutdown that happened last year. And, that, with or without that, if we have another outbreak like we had last year, businesses are going to suffer. Schools are going to suffer. School children are going to suffer. It looks like children, which scares the hell out of me as a parent of a 3-year-old, are already having a bigger problem with this variant of the virus than they were with the coronavirus that we dealt with last year, that strain. So, if we don't get this under control, it doesn't matter if some government official comes out and puts things in lockdown or not. We're going to have a huge, huge economic and health catastrophe on our hands.
Well, business owners will be forced to lock down because they're sick, or they don't have employees, or they don't have customers.
And let's not forget, there was a 5-year-old in Texas that died from this last week.
Right. And
5-year-old.
Yeah, right. Customers will not go.
Yeah, that's what, and that, they saw this in countries that didn't lock down. For a while there, I believe it was Sweden that was everybody pointed to from the anti-vaccination crowd. Right. And we've seen from their data, that they suffered much longer and much more severely than the folks who did lock down. So, if we don't do this, and 99% of the people who are in hospitals and who are dying from this are unvaccinated.
Yeah.
I don't know what else you need to see.
Well, obviously, we now are living in a divided state and a divided nation, and it's divided along the lines of those who have received the vaccine and those who have not.
And we're talking about divided on a health issue. It's a health issue, not a political issue, people. But I'm so concerned that the people that are anti-vax are just going to stand their ground and not move. I don't know that there's any way you can change
I
their
don't think at
minds.
this point even former President Donald Trump could come out and say,
Who's been vaccinated?
Yes.
He's vaccinated.
I know.
He's vaccinated by that very beautiful vaccine.
I'm just saying, I don't think that would even change people's minds at this point. I really don't. I want to go on to something else here.
Speaking of minds.
Talking about people whose minds can't change. Mo Brooks' mind is like concrete. It's all mixed up and permanently set. But Mo Brooks, this recently came out, and Fort Rucker, Army base here in Alabama, the Army brass said, look, if you can't prove you were vaccinated, you're going to have to wear a mask on base. Seems like a reasonable thing to say. If you're not vaccinated, you have to wear a mask on base. Well, Mo Brooks came out, and he's smarter than the military brass, and he said that the military was infringing on their liberty, and that they should be able to go into the base whether they're vaccinated or not, and not wear masks. Now, I don't think Mo understands much about.
Well, he dodged the draft, so he really doesn't know much about the military.
He doesn't know much about the military because basically when you volunteer or you're drafted into the military, you don't have any rights. You have
They owned your entire body. It's not just your service. They actually physically own your body.
Well, you are the military's. But
And the big thing though with the military is that they don't get involved in all of this politics and all that kind of stuff. It's what do we do? What's the safest way, the most effective way? How do we keep the fighting force safe? And this is the way that they've looked at the data and they looked at the stats and said, listen, we're not going to require you to get the vaccine, but if you don't get the vaccine, then you're going to wear this mask so you don't infect everybody else, and we don't have an outbreak on this base that could possibly kill some of the people that are fighting for the country, which seems like a very reasonable thing to say, right?
It does. I know this week there was a report where Senator Shelby said that he didn't think that Mo Brooks was very qualified, and he thought he was irrational. And Mo came out and said, well, he was very rational, and he's fighting the swamp, and that he also said that he had been elected to public office more than anyone in the state of Alabama. Now, Josh, how do you fight the swamp?
Smells like an alligator to me.
If you've been in the swamp longer than anybody else, or elected to the swamp.
I've never understood the logic of Mo Brooks, and I won't even try to. But I will say Richard Shelby would beat him by 40 points. I mean, he would beat him by 40 points. And I just said, why? What swamp, man?
I don't know, Susan. What about the alligators?
He seems like an alligator to me. He's been there so long. He's one of those big ones like you see down in New Orleans. Yeah. One of those big ones with the big mouth that's always
yapping.
Doing
All right.
that.
Well, that's going to have to be the last word on that. You're watching the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back. Crocodile tears.
Your career isn't a job, it's a journey. Your next job could lead to bigger things, and you're in charge of how fast and how far you want to go. At alabamaworks.com, you can connect with employers and start working right now. Then chart your path forward with training and career planning tools. That next paycheck is great, but it's only the beginning. Start a great success story at alabamaworks.com.
So you got caught speeding. But this time you got more than a ticket.
What are you in for?
Vehicular homicide.
Stop speeding before speeding stops you. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. Our special guest today is Robyn Hyden with Alabama Arise. Robyn, thank you for joining us.
Good to be here, Bill. Good morning.
Good morning. I have to say that your group does so much good, and it's such hard work. But I talk to people at the State House who constantly say that y'all are the hardest working advocacy group in Alabama. I don't know if that's true or not, but y'all do work very hard. Could you tell our viewers a little bit about what you do?
Thank you for the compliment, Bill. Alabama Arise is an anti-poverty coalition, so we have plenty of work to do. That's why we've been working at it for so long. For 33 years, we have worked to address poverty at the state legislature. We are a nonpartisan, nonprofit coalition. We are faith-based groups, civic groups, nonprofit groups, and individuals united in our belief that Alabama could do better to reduce poverty. And sometimes our state policies are not doing enough. We're not doing what we should do to make life better for all of our citizens.
You know, people like me and other commentators, and I guess politicians as well, sometimes talk about that poor people do not have lobbyists, but y'all really are the lobbyists for the poor in our state, aren't you?
I had to call you out on that because that's our role. You know, lobbyists don't have a great reputation sometimes, but we view it as a really important duty that every time our people in poverty are being discussed at the State House, we need to be at the table. Poor people need to be at the table. We view it as our job to bring citizen lobbyists into the State House, to demystify the process, to introduce them to their lawmakers. And our role is to, in any way we can, to make sure all of our state legislators and our state representatives know there are poor people in every community in our state, and it's their job to do better by those people.
Well, and you can correct me anytime I'm wrong about the needs of our people, and especially those that are less fortunate and need a helping hand and a leg up. I know there's a lot of issues that are on your agenda. Mm-hmm. One of the things, and you and I have talked about this, is how the money is going to be spent from the American Rescue Act, I think, or Rescue Plan. And that's billions of dollars, and Alabama's getting a lot of money. And what I worry about is, are we going to try to spend it on prisons or new buildings for the legislature? But what are your thoughts on how this money should be spent?
We recently released our recommendations for principles for spending the Rescue Plan money. That is $4 billion that our state legislators are going to have access to deciding how that money is spent. $2 billion is going to the state, $2 billion is going to city and local governments. Okay. There are tremendous opportunities. We are looking at what will help the most vulnerable people in our state. So we know that rural residents, Black people and people of color in our state, women, unemployed people, they have been the most directly hurt by the COVID-19 pandemic. Right. They're still suffering. If you check out our State of Working Alabama report, which we released earlier this year, it's on our website, alarise.org, you can view the data on just who is still struggling to recover. These funds are supposed to help those citizens. So instead of building new prisons, which we know citizens of this state have made very clear, that's not where we want to spend our money, our federal money, our state money, our local money. Let's spend that on things like childcare. Let's spend it on public transportation, housing. There's about to be a tremendous eviction crisis when the eviction moratorium expires. All of these issues that we have pushed for years at the state level to say we can invest so much more in state dollars, we could draw down so much more in federal dollars if we would just make these things a priority. So those things are outlined in our recommendations, which you can find on our website as well. And we know that healthcare is another tremendous opportunity where this is a healthcare crisis. It's a crisis of public health. We believe there are so many opportunities to expand Medicaid and invest in our healthcare infrastructure that were also made possible through the Rescue Plan.
Well, and the Biden administration is working on this now, and the Congress is working on it as well. For the remaining 12 states that have failed to expand Medicaid, there is a plan to pay for this, to have the first 2 years completely paid for, even though we've squandered time and money that should have been invested in this.
Yeah, and it's easy to look back and say what might have been because we've been asking our state to expand Medicaid for, almost 10 years since the Affordable Care Act was passed. But let's look at what could be. We now have more money on the table to support Medicaid expansion than ever has been made available. So I think a lot of our lawmakers are still operating under old assumptions that, we missed the window of opportunity. There was way more money and we lost it. No, the rescue plan put a lot more money back on the table for Alabama and our governor to say, let's do this our way. Let's do the Medicaid expansion or the healthcare proposal that will serve our needs the best. And we still think it's possible. We don't want to look back again in 8 or 9 years and say, what could have been if we had just taken this brave step?
The other thing that I know you briefly hit on it, we've got about 2 minutes left to talk about this, and I think it's important, is that Governor Ivey and the legislature is trying to work on another plan, to build 3 new prisons. Our prisons are overcrowded, they are unsafe, they are unconstitutional, they are hellholes, just to put it bluntly. I've been to 3 of them. You see the need in the state far beyond what prisons could do, don't you?
Absolutely. So one thing I should have said about Arise is our agenda comes from our members. We don't have a bunch of policy analysts or board members sitting in a room deciding what's important. Our members tell us. And for years, our members have said, if we want to address poverty in our state, yes, we need to invest in healthcare. We need to invest in the safety net. We need to provide more consumer protections. We need to protect voting rights. But criminal justice reforms are always key and have been on our agenda for a long time. And that doesn't mean building new prisons or giving more money to the police. What it means to us is investing in mental health, in community courts, in diversion programs so that our communities really are safer, that we're investing in people's ability to protect themselves and their community. And we're not just locking people up and throwing away the key.
Right.
So, I know that the Ivey administration is looking into whether they can use rescue plan money to build new prisons. We feel like if you're going to do that, that is not going to solve any of our problems. And we will hope to see sentencing reforms, repealing our 3 strikes law. We would hope to see more investments in community services and programs to actually help people instead of just throwing them somewhere where we can't see them and letting their prisons rot away for 30 years.
Well, I want to thank you for coming to join us today. And these are issues that are not Democrat issues or Republican issues. These are human issues.
Absolutely.
And thank you for all the hard work.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you. Our special guest today has been Robyn Hyden with Alabama Arise. We'll be right back. Thank you.
You'll never guess what 400,000 people in the U.S. were using when they crashed their cars last year. No, not this. This. Distracted driving will kill you. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
If you've been working, you've already proven yourself in ways you may not even notice. Managing your time, communicating effectively, and working as part of a team are key skills that employers value. At alabamaworks.com, you can find out how to build on your experience to up your game and get the job you really want because it's out there. Start your new success story at alabamaworks.com.
Sponsored by Alabama Works, the Alabama Broadcasters Association, and this station.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. Alabama's Attorney General, Steve Marshall, leads the Rule of Law Defense Fund, part of RAGA, the Republican Attorney General's Association, that paid for robocalls to get people in the right place for January 6th riot, that
Insurgency.
the insurrection that took over the Capitol of the United States. His part in that is unclear, but he is the head of that organization. This past week, Alabama political reporters requested his calendar, excuse me, for the days leading up to the insurrection and days following it. We were given a letter back from the Attorney General's office that said those dates and his whereabouts could not be released because of security matters. Susan, what security?
That was 7 months ago. What's security got to do with anything? There is I call it a rumor because that's all we know at this point, that he was actually at Mar-a-Lago for the planning of the insurrection. But now, when he's asked to account for his whereabouts during that time frame, oh, it's security. That's just a nice excuse for, I don't want y'all to know where I was.
Josh, we've asked for a lot of public records requests before. Never heard that excuse, right?
Well, I think he's telling the truth. It is a security issue. It's, I mean, although I think the security is his security and being able to maintain that office, finding out where he was. But I'll say this: it's a nonsense excuse, and they know that, and they've been covering this up. But maybe. Listen, I expect any day now that Steve Marshall is going to get right to the bottom of that investigation into Steve Marshall. So it's, that he's carrying out. And so maybe in that investigation, we can find out where he was. It's ludicrous. I mean, it is. It's just ludicrous.
I think what he was doing was he was probably doing some career coaching. Is probably what he was doing.
Yeah, with an intern or two.
Career coaching. I want to move on. Josh, your story about the Trent Willis, who has been accused of taking $100,000 in campaign money from Richie Horton. That's an allegation.
AG Steve Marshall won't investigate.
And for 3 years, Steve Marshall's office did not investigate it. Now, the Sheriff Blakely up in Limestone County is on trial. And one of the star witnesses was Trent Willis.
Yeah, right. It's shocking. It was one of the weirder things, and one of the more underhanded things I've ever seen a state agency do, or the Attorney General's office do in a case like that, was essentially hide an investigation of a key witness, and then as soon as they had finished questioning that witness, then admitted that they had the investigation going on, so he could then start pleading the fifth to all the questions that the defense might ask him. But that trial is a mess from the very beginning, from when the judge started blocking the press and the public from seeing the jury selection, all the way up through that. Now there's other allegations of witness tampering or intimidation, I should say. It just has been really a circus up there, and following it closely for the last few days with some folks from AL.com and the local TV stations up in Huntsville that have done a great job covering it. It is I don't know how they can convict a guy who's as popular as Mike Blakely there on what they have before the jury. I'm not saying he didn't do anything wrong, not at all. I believe he absolutely broke the law in a lot of instances. But what they have presented so far, I've got some real questions as to whether or not that jury up there is going to ever convict him of those things.
Well, they were asked by the defense, did they have any of their witnesses were currently under investigation, Susan, and they said no.
Well, that's because Steve Marshall is not actually investigating a case he's had for 3 years.
Well, actually, it turns out that they had to admit that Trent Willis was under investigation.
Yeah, there's no
Judge wasn't
case.
none too happy, as we say down here in the South.
I think the biggest problem in the Blakely thing is he's Democrat.
Yeah.
And Steve Marshall goes after only Democrats in public office, never Republicans. He's been presented cases time and time again, and he will not even hear them.
Well, Josh, it's a mess, but nothing made national news like a councilman up in Tarrant, Alabama, a city out in Jefferson County, about 6,000 plus. And during a council meeting with the mayor and the council together, one of these guys, what's his name, John Bryan, a council member, stood it up and started flinging the N-bomb like he was at a KKK rally.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I just, how do people, I can't even express it. How do people stand up and say that in 2021? And then to make it worse was just refuse to apologize and refuse to offer any resignation or anything. It just doesn't, I don't understand how in this day and age a white man stands up, or any man stands up in the middle of a public hearing like that, or a public presentation of a board, and says the N-word out like that. I just don't. And I know his excuse is he was quoting the mayor because the mayor had said something in a private session, and
the mayor is black.
Right.
The mayor is
black. Mayor is black, yes. And the mayor, he said the mayor was being derogatory towards another council member. Come on, y'all.
Well, he also he attacked Muslims and homosexuals. So obviously he's a equal opportunity racist. So there you go, Susan. Oddly enough, the Democrats called for Mr. Bryant's resignation, and then some 48 hours later, the Republican Party also called for
Algott condemned him twice for that. And you know, I'm with Josh. It's just outrageous. Even if you're quoting somebody, there's a way of doing that where you don't actually drop that word. That word should never be heard again.
Well, if you watch the video, though, he doesn't sound like he's quoting someone.
Probably not. Most likely not. I mean, he, like you said, equal opportunity racist.
Yeah. I think, Josh, you know, it took the Algott, the Alabama Republican Party, a minute to come to the conclusion that this was a bad idea to have one of their guys up there slinging the N-bomb like it was candy at Mardi Gras. But they came around and did the right thing, it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, that's encouraging. And maybe we're getting to that point where, you know, we can at least get on the same page about this. But I mean, really, it's not that hard to be kind and gracious to people and to not be this offensive with folks. I mean, it's really not. It's not hard at all.
All right, well, that's going to have to be the last word. You've been watching the voice of Alabama politics. You watch us because we watch them.